Thank you. Welcome to the future, as I would say, or at least one version of it. I'm here because I have a problem, and frankly, I think everyone who joined me today are the people who can help me fix it. The leaders running our organization, our cities, our companies, our institutions. They're functionally illiterate in the language of tomorrow. They can optimize, they can execute, but ask them to navigate genuine uncertainty, they freeze. And here's the uncomfortable truth: we're training them to freeze because most leadership development is still teaching people how to win the current game and not how to play the changing one. So I've come here today to recruit you, game designers, educators, thinkers. You have something that the foresight world desperately needs. We're living through what some experts call polycrisis, not one big crisis, but many interlocking ones coming together simultaneously. Climate disruptions, war, for example, AI displacement, geopolitical fractures that are happening, and demographic shifts in our markets. None of these are surprises. The signals were there even before. The models existed, but leaders weren't trained to read them. Think about that for a second. We put people in charge of organizations or communities and entire supply chains that we never taught them how to think about the future. Not really. And this is where strategic foresight comes in. A word of clarification, because I know this room has people at different points of appreciation with this discipline. Strategic foresight isn't prediction. It's not forecasting. It's not crystal ball gazing. It's the disciplined practice of mapping the many futures available to us, one that we sometimes categorize as projected, probable, even plausible, even preposterous, sorry, with the goal of identifying preferred one. More on this in a bit. It's about building what UNESCO calls futures literacy, the skill of using the future to change what you do in the present. Powerful idea, and yet here's the friction point. Right now, this discipline mostly lives in a 100-page white paper, very dense scenario reports, for example, data heavy, but very light on the action. Leaders look at a graph of 2040 and they would feel nothing. There is no skin in the game, no stakes, no consequence. And so this is exactly why I'm making the case for game-based response. Think about what makes game fundamentally different from any other learning medium. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. It isn't graphics, it isn't the points, it's gaining agency. In a game, you don't observe the future, you inhabit it. You don't read about the crisis, you fail through it. You don't study the consequence of a decision. We live with them. That's visceral, that's embodied experience of consequence. That's what changes behavior, and that's what builds the muscle memory that a white paper never will. So here's the challenge that I'm putting on the table, and I want you to hold it in your mind for the next 15 minutes that we're together. What would a game look like that genuinely develops a leader's capacity to think about the future? What mechanics, what tensions, what does winning even mean in this context? So let me give you one conceptual anchor that I know you'll explore a bit more later after this talk, that I keep returning. So it's called the Future Scone, Voros's Future Scone, and you will see many variations of this in the internet. Most leaders live in the tiny center. It is what we call projected. The trend extrapolation, as I would call it, a safe forecast. Your job as game designers is to pull them into the wider space of the plausible, the provocative, the plausible, and even the preposterous. A leader who has gamed out 100 different futures, yes, even fictional ones, would respond to disruption and uncertainty very, very differently from one who hasn't. So what are the best of breed mechanics, if I may use the word, that we need to borrow appropriate? The first is signal scanning. In foresight, this is the practice of hunting for early, very weak indicators that something is shifting before it becomes a trend, or what some of you might encounter, a mega trend. In game language, you already know this. It's the fog of war. It's hidden information. It's the feeling of peering into uncertainty and choosing where to look. We need leaders to treat signals of change the way a good player treats loot, with curiosity, with urgency, with the awareness that the signal they dismiss today might be the disruption that breaks them tomorrow. Second mechanic is backcasting. In foresight, we don't always start from today and project forward. Sometimes we start from the preferred future and work backwards. What had to be true to get there? What investments, what decisions, what pivots that you need to do in order for you to arrive at that preferred future. In game terms, this is what we would call the reverse tree. You start at the end state and unlock backwards, right? What capabilities had to exist? What trade-offs had to be made along the way? It's deceptively simple mechanic as it is, but it reframes how leaders should think about strategy, from being very reactive to a bit more intentional. The third mechanic is what I really love, this one called wildcards. In foresight, wildcards are low probability but very high impact events. These the things that are in the model but could break everything. A pandemic, for example, a political collapse, technological discontinuity. AI is here, and what's next after that? In gaming, we already build this as random number generator or RNG event cards, right? This is what we call the glitch, the unexpected that breaks your beautiful strategy and forces you to adopt. Here's the thing: most leadership development teaches people to plan. We need to teach them to pivot. There's a difference, right? And a well-designed wildcard mechanic is one of the best tools we had to build, and we have to build that muscle. So I want to stop here for a while and put you to work. So I just dropped something in the chat, a signal from 2035, a fictional but plausible shift in the world. Let's take 20-30 seconds to mull over that, read it, and tell me what mechanic would you use to represent that shift in a game. What would you design? Right? So go for it. Let me just grab water. So let's see what's coming up. I can see some of you are typing already. And this right here is what I call a serious play intersection. It's where creative instinct meets strategic intent. You're not designing for fun, you're designing safe thinking spaces where many of our leaders can fail safely, learn viscerally, and arrive at the real thing a little bit more prepared. So, but let me take the argument one level deeper, because I think this is where game designers have an unfair advantage over every other kind of learning design. The hardest problem in leadership development isn't teaching new skills. It's unlearning new ones. Leaders are rewarded for what worked yesterday. Their instincts are calibrated for a world that no longer exists. And those instincts are deeply ingrained. What we need are games that are functioning as like unlearning engines, where the winning strategy of level 1 becomes the losing strategy of level 2, where competence in one context actively misleads you into the next. That's not easy to design, and props to you guys, but I know you can do this. But it's enormously powerful, and it mirrors how disruption actually works in the real world. Next one would be, here's the design quality I think is hardest to get right, and the most important, I think. The games that matter to leaders are the ones that are hardest to win. They are the ones that are hardest to feel good about winning. Slight difference there. We need games where players make a completely rational, defensible decision and still feels the cost of it. Not a penalty, not a warning sign, just the weight of the consequence arriving on time. Because that's what leadership under uncertainty actually feels like. You rarely choose between right and wrong. You're choosing between two versions that can't coexist. And that's what I mean by the moral friction. And no white paper teaches that. So one more design principle I want to flag, because I think it's the most underexplored. We need games that build systemic empathy. It's that ability to trace how a decision made today ripples into the consequence for people who don't yet exist in contexts we can't fully see. So how does, for example, a CEO supply chain decision in 2026 affect a digital citizen in 2050? How does a policy shift in one region shapes a possibility in another? Realms, right? What happens in this realm or era? How does that affect the next realm? So legacy mechanics are one to answer, are one answer. So where our actions in one situation permanently alters the board for the next player, the next situation, then the next chapter. You don't just feel the consequence, you have to leave them behind. So here is my wanted list for this community, and I mean wanted in both sense, needed and actively sought, not just me. I think you will see this opening in the market. One would be simulations for wicked problems. Games where winning is defined not as the highest score, but as a thoughtful action to the interconnected problems, unsolvable even, but where there are no clean solutions or any trade-offs, and you have the wisdom to navigate through it. The next one would be scalable foresight. Right now, most foresight exercise or activities methods happen in a room of 12 people and take probably a full day. We need digital, modular foresight games that can reach an entire organization immediately or quickly. So it's really a scale. Hundreds of people in the same scenario. Yes, I think the technology exists, but the design I haven't really encountered yet. So that's one challenge. The last the last one would be what I call pre-mortem games. A tool for the board of directors, the C-suites, the executive teams to stress test their 5-year strategy against 50 different wild cards that we talked about a while ago, scenarios in one afternoon. So it's not a workshop. It's a game, fast, modular, and replayable. So I want to be transparent about why I'm here in a room of game designers making this case. I come at this as an experienced designer and a foresight practitioner. I know the domain. I understand the frameworks, the methods, the urgency of the problem. But I am not a game designer. You are. Well, many of you are. So what I've learned, and slowly, sometimes painfully, is that the gap between a powerful foresight concept and a meaningful learning experience is a design gap. It's not a content problem, it's not a craft problem. So the bridge between what I know and what you know, right? That's where the next generation of leadership development lives, I think. Not in another white paper or report, not in another 2-day workshop. It's something that people can actually want to play. So I'll leave you with the truth that I keep returning to. That the future is not a destination and we are traveling toward. It is a game that we are actively coding right now with every decision that we make or fail to make. The question is whether we're coding it intentionally, whether the people in positions of consequence have the capacity to think across time, to hold complexity, to act with wisdom in conditions of uncertainty. So I believe games can build that capacity or that ability. I believe this community can design the tools that the foresight field hasn't been able to create on its own. So here's my invitation, and it's an open one. Bring this one, bring your ideas into the conversation. Challenge my framing, tell me what's missing, what's wrong, what would you do differently? So let's spend the next 10 minutes on your ideas, your questions, your pushback. And that's the part I'm really looking forward to. So ask me anything. Thank you for listening.